City News on TV Rotorua is proudly brought to you by Trade Central.
Good evening, Rotorua. Tonight on City News. Rotorua RSA President William McDonald says he's vowing a course of rejuvenation for the organisation. Council delays the release of the 2015 to 25 long-term plan for public consultation, and a Crankworks review showed the event as a huge success. As the RSA prepares to commemorate the 100th anniversary of World War I, the local branch looks toward an uncertain future. The new Rotorua RSA President William McDonald says he's overseeing a dire financial position within the organisation, which is unfortunate, but he's vowing a course of rejuvenation. Mr McDonald says he's working through the issues and promises a full and frank report to members.
It's a year of rejuvenation, and in fact I've called it Project Rejuvenation since I've taken over. We are in a delicate position. I think the synonym of a hemorrhage is quite apt. We have to stop the bleeding.
Where is the bleeding coming from, and what is bleeding?
Primarily it's the financial position. We're not unlike many clubs throughout the country in this modern times. We're finding people are not quite as inclined to come to clubs as they used to. We have our major membership, which was predominantly ex-Second World War, who are obviously diminishing in their 80s and 90s. We're finding that many of the traditional things the RSA used to do is no longer keeping pace with society. And we have to become more ambitious, we have to become more exploratory, we have to stimulate people to want to be with us. And I suppose the temptation is to look outwards and say, well, we need more new numbers. I actually have the philosophy we've got to look after what we've got and at the same time look outside.
An early morning assault in the city last month that featured in the popular crime show Police 10/7 has yielded some positive lines of inquiry for police. The crime took place in the early hours of Saturday the 14th of March after a short verbal exchange between a group in a vehicle and some people walking along Renoff Street, which turned violent. One of the men from the vehicle used an air rifle as a club, and a short time later the vehicle mounted the footpath directly towards a group of pedestrians. As it reversed, it struck two men, leaving one needing hospital treatment. Police District Communications Manager Kim Perks says despite the tips, police would still like information from the public. Anyone who might be able to assist with this investigation is encouraged to call Detective Neil Collins at Rotorua Police or anonymously to Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. Delays in processing audit sign-off of the Council's 2015 to 25 long-term plan have meant a short delay in the document's public release. The consultation document is now expected to be ready for release at the beginning of May. At a council meeting last week, the draft document was approved for public release subject to sign-off by government auditors. However, audit approval is not now expected until late this week, following an auditor's request for a number of minor amendments. The change in timing will allow the council to formally adopt the revised consultation document at next week's reconvened council meeting. The adjusted timeframe will mean resetting the dates for the month-long public consultation. However, the Council still intends to have its final 2015 to 25 long-term plan fully completed and adopted by the end of June. The dates for release of Rotorua Lakes Council public consultation document for its 2015 to 25 long-term plan and the period and process for making public submissions are to be advertised following the Council's adoption of the revised document at its meeting on the 29th of April. This month's Neighbour in Our Community guest speaker, Alberto Trostel, says he's looking forward to sharing his experiences about leaving Chile and resettling in Rotorua. Neighbour in Our Community is a project first created by Settlement Support and is now administered by English language partners and is a forum for migrants to share experiences. Mr. Trostel says he supports the initiative and hopes his experiences will help others.
I work in tourism for 20 years in my country with mainly foreign passenger, foreign tourists, and then I feel I need more knowledge. I have some question, and so in New Zealand I can find the answer this important question for me.
In sport tonight, a review of the recent Crankworx mountain biking festival has revealed the event as a huge success. Crankworx is the world's largest mountain biking festival and was held here last month. Organiser Tuck Mutu says he's been overwhelmed at the success and is looking forward to the event next year being even bigger and better.
We didn't put this event on to make money from the event, and to put things in perspective, I didn't make any money from the event. My wages were paid from my normal business, and yeah, at the end of this event I still have to go back and get into the office and do my normal work, and that's what I'm doing right now. You know, I'm trying to catch up on 7 months of neglect from my business, so the way forward for me is to keep doing what I normally do, is to keep working on Mountain Bike Lords Tour, working on multi-day adventures and doing that business side of things. As far as the event side goes, yep, we'll start those negotiations with sponsors for next year. We'll start locking in dates and the plans and talking to the tourism community here in Rotorua, and then of course the rest of New Zealand as well, to look at how we start to improve and make Crankworx bigger for next year. To your weather update now. Tonight, fine with southeasterlies and an overnight low of 9. Tomorrow, Friday, mainly fine with light winds, a high of 18 and a low of 6. And looking out to Saturday, mainly fine with light winds, a high of 17 and a low of 8. The marine forecast for Lake Rotorua for Friday, southeast 10 knots rising to 15 knots in the morning and then easing to 10 knots in the evening with waves less than half a metre and fine. For program listings or any other information, you can visit tvrotorua.co.nz. Still to come in tonight's program, we find out about osteopathy with local osteopath Mark Franken, and we talk with Rotorua MP, the Honourable Todd McLeay.
City News on TV Rotorua is proudly brought to you by Trade Central.
Welcome back. Well, osteopathy is something that many of us may need in our lifetime. I certainly have myself. I'm joined now by a registered osteopath working out of Rotorua. His name is Mark Franken. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Very good. So tell me a little bit about the practice and how you got into it.
I got into osteopathy by actually being a patient. As a teenager, I was into various sports, mainly water sports, and one summer I was kayaking. I tipped my kayak over on one side and the seat broke and my ribs hit the side of the cockpit. And I was having difficulty breathing after that, so I made an appointment to see an osteopath. And he was the one that talked to me about the profession and got me interested. Yeah. So I went home from that and said, Mum, I'm going to be an osteopath. Oh, well, it was a very convenient accident. I'm sure she'd probably be quite happy you had that little bit of a mishap as a child. She was a patient herself, so she knew all about it. So tell me what drew you to that particular practice, because it was an accident, a medical accident. What was it about osteopathy that intrigued you? Because it can't have just been one conversation. You must have gone and had a look. It was the ability to be able to interact with people, to work with my hands, and to do something that didn't involve just sitting behind a desk all day. Oh, there you go. Got to have something good to do with your life, I guess. Yes. So it's Awareness Week this week, yeah. And what are the messages that the osteopaths of New Zealand and the world, because it's international, would like the public to know? We just want to let the world know that osteopathy is good for your health, for your physical and mental well-being.
So give us a rundown of what it is, if you had to define it for us.
Osteopaths believe in an integrated approach to the body. They believe that the neuromuscular, musculoskeletal and visceral system, the organs, all work together. And that if you can help them work together, you will be healthier.
So it's not just about bones?
No.
Well, see, there was a misconception that I had, that it was just about bones.
Osteopaths treat muscles, nerves, ligaments, joints and fascia.
Fascia, what's fascia?
Fascia is the envelopes around the groups of muscles in the body.
Okay. And so somebody, let's say, that's just come off the rugby field, that comes to you, what kind of treatment, what kind of holistic treatment would you be looking at for them?
We'd be looking at finding out the history of the accident. We want to know how it happened, how they were hit, from which angle, where the force came, obviously the symptoms they have, any relevant factors in their past medical history. And then we want to assess their posture and find out what's moving right and what isn't, and try and tackle the cause of the problem, not just the symptoms.
So what kind of training do osteopaths go through to be able to make those kind of informed judgments on injury?
The training in Auckland is at Unitec. It is a 5-year course where you do a Bachelor of Human Sciences and Master of Science in Osteopathy.
Right, so it's pretty complicated, isn't it?
It's very similar to medical training in that you have to know anatomy, physiology and pathology.
And registered?
Yes. Yes. All osteopaths in New Zealand are registered by the Osteopathic Council of New Zealand.
Okay, and so I have had one experience where I had a very, very sore back, and I came in to get it treated by an osteopath. Tell me what kind of procedures you use. Is it massage? Is it stretch? Can you talk me through what you do?
We do a physical examination and watch how the body moves in particular directions. We would palpate muscles and see which muscles are tight and which ones are normal tension. Check the movement on individual joints. We would use orthopaedic tests, which are standard tests that are used by anyone in the medical profession, and make a diagnosis on that basis and apply a suitable treatment.
Why would you like more people to look at osteopaths as an alternative to just popping along to the doctor?
We think it offers a slightly different approach to medicine rather than just giving someone pills. And as I said before, it's always better to treat the cause rather than just the symptoms.
So just finally, where can people find you or find more information if they want to?
They can go onto the Osteopaths New Zealand website, or I have my own website, www.rotaraosteopathicclinic.co.nz.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Kia ora Rotorua, and thank you very much for joining us here at TV Rotorua on the TV Rotorua couch. I'm joined by our local MP, Todd McKay. Thank you very much for joining us, Todd.
Great to be here.
Good. So, hey, how have you been and what have you been up to lately?
Look, really good. It's been a very busy start to the year. So for the first 8 weeks of Parliament, I suppose, since Parliament came back beginning of February, we've had 7 weeks of sitting sessions and 1 week of recess. That's a little unusual, so quite a bit at the beginning of the year. But the last 3 weeks have been a recess. That means Parliament's not in session. As a minister, I still must go to Wellington. Cabinet meets on a Monday in the morning, and you have other ministerial responsibilities and duties. But it gives you a great opportunity to spend much more time on the ground here at home in the electorate. And I've been using it as well as I can to get out and visit many groups, schools, attend lots of activities. Been a very busy time.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how much of the month would you spend down in Wellington, and how much do you actually spend here?
So I'm at home at home in Rotorua more than I'm away. I go to Wellington very early on a Tuesday morning, return on a Thursday night, and it's about 3 weeks of the month. So we do about a 3 week stint and have a 1 or 2 week recess. just depends. Occasionally, a little bit of travel elsewhere in the country for ministerial reasons, occasionally overseas. But I work pretty hard to prioritise so that I'm not away too much. First and foremost, my responsibilities are here at home in the electorate.
Absolutely. So for those that haven't caught up or keep up to date with what's happening down in Parliament, what's pressing, what's happening in your portfolio?
Well, they're very busy, so I've got a number of portfolios now. Minister of Revenue, Minister of State-Owned Enterprises, Associate Foreign Affairs and Associate Trade. In Revenue, I have a big push this year around simplification. I really want to make the tax system simpler and reduce costs on taxpayers, particularly small businesses when they administer tax. So if you think about it, there's always forms to fill out and so on, but particularly for small businesses, this can be quite a drag on their time, quite an economic cost. And we're looking for ways to reduce that amount of time that they have to focus on taxation. Look, I think it's better they spend time on their businesses, growing them, investing in them, rather than worrying about the tax system. So over the course of this year, you'll hear a lot more about that. One of the things we're looking at is provisional tax. It's a system that means you have to pay your tax in advance this year based upon your activity last year. It works very well for the government, but it's a real drag upon businesses, quite a lot of costs involved. We're looking at ways to make this better, and one of the concepts we're developing is PAYE for businesses. So you pay as you earn as you go along. We're still working through that, but there'll be a lot of public consultation. I'm very keen for people to tell us what they think we should do to make the tax system simpler, easier, more modern.
Oh, that's good, because there might be some really good ideas out there. Some people in business for quite a long time have probably said to themselves over and over again, it should be done like this. So it's a pretty good thing that you're taking into consideration the views of our locals. Now, in your other portfolios, how have you been doing?
Yeah, so state-owned enterprises, there are about 8 of the companies I'm responsible for, Kiwi Bank, Solid Energy, Kiwi Rail, and a few other small ones around that. Airways Corporation's responsible for air traffic control, things like that. Look, they're very good companies, but I think the government needs to make sure that they're not risky for the taxpayer. So if you take Solid Energy as an example, a coal mining company, it owes $300 million to banks, probably another $200 million around the place. The price of coal a couple of years ago was $300 a tonne. It's down to $92 a tonne last week. So that's a company that's under particular stress at the moment. So what that means for the taxpayer who owns this company is that it has no value in it anymore, and there is risk that they might have to put money into it. Kiwi Rail is an example. Over the last 6 years, the government's put $1.3 billion into Kiwi Rail to keep it running. So it's $1.3 billion we can't spend on schools or hospitals or the police force and so on. And so I think my job is to make sure that these businesses are run well, that they are not risky for the taxpayer, that they don't make decisions that could cost money in the end. But generally there's a pretty good working relationship there.
Okay, all right, we're going to cut to a break now, Todd. So stay there, Rotorua. We'll be right back with part 2 with Todd McLean. Kia ora, Rotorua. Thank you very much for joining us once again, round 2 with Todd McLean. Todd, so let me just ask you, what do you think makes New Zealand a special place to be?
We could analyse this to death, but it's as simple as saying it is just special. So I think it's a number of things. This is an exquisite country. People visit here and they just can't imagine the beauty. And they go home and tell others, that it's like no other part of the world. And it changes a lot, from the wonderful beaches in Northland to the snowy peaks of the South Island. Everywhere you go is different, but retains beauty of its own. But I think we were talking over the break, a lot of it is also around the people. There are, think about beaches, wonderful beaches in New Zealand. Well, the world is full of pretty nice beaches, And so what makes New Zealand very special, I think, is our way of life and people, and that we are friendly and warm, and we work hard. There's lots of very good things about Kiwis. So I suppose the lesson in this is, what does that mean? We shouldn't take this for granted, because everybody wants to, be a tourist destination. Everybody wants to, to win the Rugby World Cup, all these other things and so on. So the things that come naturally to us, we shouldn't take for granted. We need to work very, very hard. I think, I put it down, I've got this taxi driver theory, right? So when you get off an aeroplane in a new country, the first people you see is the customs officials and immigration, and often the second is a taxi driver if you're taking a taxi. And I visited a Caribbean country a few years ago when I was living overseas with my wife, who was there for work, and we got off the plane and I handed over my passport and they said, "Welcome to Grenada, thank you for visiting." That's very nice. And when I got the bags, they said, "Welcome to Grenada and thank you for visiting." And I got in the taxi, the guy said, "Where are you from?" And I told him, he said, "Well, welcome to our country. Thank you so much for visiting." And I asked him why everybody was thanking me. And he said, "Well, without you, we wouldn't have jobs, me as a tourist." And so, from our taxi drivers to, the guy filling up the petrol to somebody serving in a restaurant or a cafe or a bar or the supermarket, we don't have to thank everybody, but actually we've got to make sure they're enjoying themselves, we're helpful and they're having a great time, because they'll go overseas, tell other people, they'll come back, and we'll get to keep our more jobs here in New Zealand.
Absolutely. So do you think that's what influences other countries to want to do business with us? So China now is becoming one of the biggest economies that we've opened up to, and we can see an influx now of Chinese interest in business.
Well, China is our biggest trading partner. We have about $21 billion worth of trade a year with China. Over the last 8 years, it's grown from $2 billion, where we bought more from them than we sold them, to over $20 billion now, and it's about equal. So we've got about $11 billion worth of trade, things that we sell to China. That will be part of it, but only part of it. I think, though, that the success with China is the hard work New Zealanders put in. We sign trade agreements and have trading relationships with lots of countries of the world. They're just pieces of paper unless people go out and do business. So we shouldn't expect people are just coming here because we're nice people. We shouldn't expect China's interested in New Zealand because we're nice people. They're here to do business as we are when we go to China or any other country. But actually, business is about relationship. And look, it's as simple as this. Your TV channel, people in Rotorua tune in to watch because they have a relationship with you, and if they decide that you don't care about them or you're not interested in them, then there's a lot of choice out there. It's the same with shops in New Zealand, it's the same with countries when it comes to tourism, it's the same with any type of trade. So, we're great people in New Zealand, but that's just a bit of it. It's about, we've got to work hard, and we've got to make sure we work hard for the things that we have and we want in the future.
Absolutely. It's all about working hard. You get nothing for free. Now, let's talk about something positive. Crime rates are down.
They are, and this is a wonderful story. Look, our police are doing an amazing job. When I was campaigning to be a local MP 7 years ago, crime rates were high and on the way up, and it was the number one issue locally. We've had crime rates fall for 5 years in a row in Rotorua. 5 years in a row, reported crime was down, collectively by 26%. So that's 2,000 fewer victims in total over that period of time. Last year there was a drop of 4.7%. That's about 500 fewer victims. That's huge.
Oh, hey, you got a new office in Portuguese.
In Tipoki, that's right. In Tipoki, yeah, we've opened an office there. I had one for the last 6 years, but it was a bit isolated, so we've got one right smack bang in the middle of town, big signs around it, and it's very much an open door policy. So we opened that a few weeks ago. It's working really well, and I'll be heading over there shortly today for a clinic and visits and so on.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure catching up with you.
Great. Good to be here.
That was the Honourable Todd McLeay talking to Melanie Groves. If you'd like to contact City News, you can phone the station on 07 3488 984 or email news@tv-rotorua.co.nz. Thanks for joining us tonight. From all the team at City News, Ko Maria.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.
City News on TV Rotorua was proudly brought to you by Trade Central.